Well, back it up to the beginning where it's not a false dichotomy of if you're criticizing Trump, it means you're going to vote for the Democrats. But what it does mean, and I had on the pollster, as far as I'm concerned, one of the only reliable pollsters out there, Richard Barris, Big Data Polling, talking about the fact that, like, okay, you're just going to make them become inactive voters and they're not going to turn out at the midterms, and low turnout doesn't favor Republicans.
The Post-Millennial reports Democrat strategist says parties should pray long and hard for an effing depression. Yo, what? A Minnesota accused assassin wrote an unhinged confession to Kash Patel claiming Waltz urged him to murder. These Democrat lawmakers say what? The Nation. Trump is the Confederacy's revenge. Well, right now, we have a lot of people talking about Trump's failings and his attack on his base over the Epstein case. I think it's important to realize the left is not any less unhinged. In fact, I'd argue they're still substantially more unhinged. But how do those of us who have backed Trump contend with him saying, do not support us? It's interesting because Democrats are latching on to this story on Epstein. They're using it as an attack vector on Trump. Now, I've laid out my position. It's very, very, very clear. I'm going to support Trump in his efforts that I think benefit us, and I will criticize him in efforts that I think are detrimental, as anyone should. And that means the Epstein thing is miserably bad for him, and he needs to be called out on it. I'm also kind of happy that he's got these victories, and I'm happy we dodged the Democrats. They're crackpots. But Viva Frei made a great point. I'm going to bring him in. We've been having some weird browser update issues, so I'm going to try and correct the audio. Here we go. 1, 2. Okay, there we go. I believe we solved the echo issue. The browser's initializing poorly. Viva, can you hear me?
I can hear you. How you doing?
How's it going, buddy? Let me pull in the camera and get you on. So right now, we're dealing with Donald Trump saying he doesn't want our support anymore. But I wanted to highlight for the beginning of this interview and segment, conversation, the Democrats are still crazy. Strategists calling for a depression. This crazy guy who claimed Tim Waltz was telling him to shoot people up. These several past mass shooters being of left persuasion. Democrats being right on the Epstein issue, I don't think should put us in a position where we're going to sacrifice the victories of the Trump administration and start supporting the psychotic behaviors of the left. But there is still a conundrum in Trump telling this morning all his past supporters, we don't want to support you anymore. You had a really great post on this that I'd highlighted where you'd mentioned, why are we going to trust the Democrats' previous administration on this? But I'm curious your thoughts on why Trump is doing this, what's going on, and what we should be doing.
Well, back it up to the beginning where it's not a false dichotomy of if you're criticizing Trump, it means you're going to vote for the Democrats. But what it does mean, and I had on the pollster, as far as I'm concerned, one of the only reliable pollsters out there, Richard Barris, Big Data Polling, talking about the fact that, like, okay, you're just going to make them become inactive voters and they're not going to turn out at the midterms, and low turnout doesn't favor Republicans. So on the one hand, shaming your most ardent supporters for following a theory that you yourself proposed, it might not get them to vote Democrat because you'd have to have a hole in your head to vote for the Democrats, but you'll just stay home. And so, and you can't poo on your own supporters and deter them from wanting to get out there and vote by calling them stupid and mean, bad people for following through on the very same story that not only Trump himself brought up, but his administration had been pursuing doggedly for 6 months. So where we start from the beginning here, my post where I said the file's potentially corrupt, that's what I said when the line coming out of the White House was Epstein killed himself, there is no blackmail material, and there is no client list. And I'm like, okay, good. That's the finding based on the FBI file. The very same criminal weaponized FBI DOJ that you're now investigating for criminality. How do you rely on it from the beginning? And I'm told, well, that's the file. We've seen it. Rely on it. Now they've pivoted and moved the goalposts to the file is corrupt and cannot be relied on. But they were telling us 3 months ago to rely on this file because it says he killed himself. You may not believe it. Here's the video, yada, yada.
Wow.
And it's actual gaslighting. Like Trump coming out and saying, I don't know why you guys find this story so important. You brought it up, and not like you brought it up, so therefore we were entitled to be fooled. You brought it up because it was a big story. We don't believe it because we want to. We believe it because there is absolutely a conspiracy there. Otherwise, Ghislaine Maxwell's not serving 25 years for human trafficking. Otherwise, Epstein, doesn't get re-indicted in 2019. So Trump brought it up to the limelight. not made something out of nothing, brought it to the limelight. Bongino, and I don't agree with Bongino when he was saying what I believed. I believe what he believed, and I believe he believed what he said for the last several years. It's a big story. You don't know how deep it goes. Follow up on it. Never let it go. I believe Patel when he was on Benny Johnson saying, Epstein, not Epstein, what's his face? Bill Gates is on the list. We know that Epstein blackmailed Bill Gates over his relationship with that woman that he was cheating on with his wife. We know that he's blackmailed people before. And now we have Trump saying, if you push this, it's a conspiracy theory. I no longer want your support. When two of the most vocal truth seekers are the director and deputy director of his FBI. And I look at this like, how would I feel if I'm Bongino or Patel? How would I feel if I'm Don Jr.? And, I'm on record saying, release the list. Everyone is on record saying release the list because everybody knows, colloquially speaking, there's a list of something there. There's unindicted co-conspirators. There are people that were involved in this. And now we're being told not only that it's a hoax from the Democrats, can't rely on the file that they were telling us to rely on 2 months ago as their messaging. And now we're being called bad people, conspiracy theorists, and he no longer wants our support. I don't know what the hell is going on because I'm trying to look for the happy ending to this. Like Trump in 2 months says, sorry, guys, I had to lie to you because we were doing some wildly, double fakey, deep investigation. And I hope you forgive me. That's not going to happen. And even if that happens, there are going to be people who say, you cannot lie. You could have just said nothing. But I'm trying to make sense of these posts. It's madness. I don't know how to make sense of it.
I don't understand what their play is. Trump repeatedly just blasting off on this issue is only making the issue more prominent. He's pouring gas on the fire. Trump is a PR master. I know he knows this. PR 101 is let it go. I've told the story before. I was hanging out at Vice. When I worked at Vice, one of their personalities on HBO went on a podcast and described raping a woman. And it caused a huge backlash for the company. And so I'm sitting down and I said, guys, this dude has gone on a show. I think you should sever him from your brand because he's one of your hosts. And they were like, well, we're going to do literal nothing. And guess what? It worked. They decided we will say nothing. We will do nothing. We will let people talk about it. A week later, they'll forget. Trump knows this. So why is he or anybody else constantly going on TV and making this the issue?
It would be, well, the reality is they made it the issue when they released that undated, unsigned memo.
But why?
Leaked it to Axios.
Why?
So and look, people want to always play the 4D, 7D, 800D level chess. Say he knows what the Streisand effect is, you would think. Another reality is he might just be getting bad feedback from the wrong people, or I should say wrong feedback from bad people. He might just be getting bad feedback. He might be sufficiently isolated from the people who put him in power at this point that he's just getting bad advice, and everyone around him is a yes man saying, yes, Donald Trump, what you're doing is great. They'll fall in line eventually, Mr. Trump, President Trump, keep saying it, and they'll fall in line. They'll take the orders. That could be one thing. The other thing, maybe, he comes out and says, it's a hoax, it's a hoax, it's a hoax. Everyone jumps down his throat. 2 months from now, I guess it wasn't a hoax, and X, Y, and Z are on the list. But the bottom line is, most importantly, the way that it's become almost abusive to the most ardent supporters of his, as if to say, now that I've gotten elected, now that some of you have lost friends over your support of me, you've lost jobs, some of you have been jailed over your support of me, now I don't want you support. I don't want your support anymore because you're repeating a story that I myself brought to your attention, that my key members of my administration have been pushing for years, and rightly so, I say. So, I've had a number of theories. Is this sabotage and the deep state? It's going to take Trump down with the Epstein file, and this is how they're going to do it. Are they sabotaging members of his administration to make the FBI look at odds with Trump's position now? I mean, and even if the argument is going to be, well, Patel and Bongino have fallen into line, they're no longer repeating the theories that they've been espousing for years, so they've fallen into line. Congrats. What do you think the Democrats are going to do? You don't have to be a scoundrel to think like one. Democrats are going to say, great, your deputy director of the FBI and your director of the FBI have been pushing these hoax conspiracy theories for years. How can we have any faith in the FBI right now?
Yep.
I mean, it's an abject PR disaster. It's an administrative disaster. I have no idea what the heck is going on. And for those who say, Trump takes to truth to get a feel for the room and see the responses, we're fast approaching the point of having said things that cannot be taken back.
Oh, this is the event horizon. Saying my past supporters, saying I don't want your support, saying this will forever be called the Jeffrey Epstein hoax. That is a nuclear bomb on the issue. That I think we're already past the point of taking it back.
I'm trying to be charitable and forgiving, and Tim, I say it. My backdrop.
I was going to say that, right?
I got the shoes up there. I say this as someone who has
too.
only
I got
been
the
trying
shoes
to.
right there.
No, you got the gold ones. They were out, and I only got the red and white. So I got two pairs for the price of one gold. It's like in a fight. If you're fighting with your wife, you can't say you're fat and ugly and then expect everyone to go back to being lovey-lovey the next day. I'm trying to be charitable and hope that we're not past the event horizon. But like they say, when you reach the event horizon of a black hole, you don't even know that you've fallen into it, and maybe we're already there. But
I want to stress, one of the things I was just highlighting a moment ago was the immigration raids have been on point, a major victory. The Doge cuts just pushed through $9 billion, fantastic. USAID, NPR, PBS budgets slashed, obliterated. The firings at all of these departments. The wholesale inflation was flat for June. Not a tremendous victory, but still good considering the tariffs. Trump has got so many victories under his belt. I don't understand why he would want to burn himself down over this. But I will stress, as an aside, 2 points. I don't want to sacrifice these tremendous victories over a single story, albeit a very important one. So I want to keep the pressure on and say this story will always matter, and we're always going to demand it, and we're not going to settle for less. But I want Trump to win the midterms. I want the Republicans to still win the midterms. What is this play? It's just risking everything.
Well, some people say to risk everything, and yes, those are big W's. He's had recent court victories. If on immigration alone, it's a smashing success on the. Some would say for him to stake everything on this particular issue, there must be some bad names in that list that are so damn would be so damn destabilizing that for the greater national security, it must be kept private. But even if that were the explanation, and he were to sit down and say, look, it has nothing to do with child trafficking or blackmail or extortion. Mike Benz was on with Charlie Kirk yesterday talking about the angle of Epstein being, a handler, money launderer, or whatever, arms dealer. If it were only from that perspective, say it's a national security issue, and we cannot disclose it, it might be too late for that now, but that would have satisfied people. People would say, okay, I understand. That confirms everything I already thought about Epstein. It's a national security issue, and we can't, risk World War III if foreign nations realize what, other nations might have been doing for the purposes of political, geopolitical strategy. But like at this point in time, some people think it's already going to have had a decisive impact on the midterms. And people don't seem to understand, okay, fine, so you lose a few seats. No, if Republicans lose the Senate, he gets impeached, he gets convicted, he gets removed from office in 2026 or 20, and they'll do it the day after they have control over the Senate. As it was for the one big beautiful bill, it took a tie break.
They would need 63 votes in the Senate or something?
Was it not? I thought it would be. So I thought it'd be a majority, but
so it's a majority to impeach, but 2/3 I think is to convict in the Senate. So
okay,
I could be wrong.
One way we'll fact check in real time. One way or the other, they're only dealing with a 6 or 7 seat differential right now, and depending on how disastrous this is, I mean, but to stake all of these successes on what? All it would have taken was A, releasing some of the documents. B, a satisfactory explanation that doesn't consist of an undated, unsigned memo leaked to Axios, and then no explanation for the better part of a week while rumors fly, and then Dan Bongino allegedly, claims he's going to leave it's him or Bondi. Then you get Todd Blanche on Friday saying, no, we all discussed it and signed off on it, except nobody signed off on it.
So it was 60. It is 67. 67 senators can convict. If Trump loses, I think 2 seats in the House, he gets impeached. He'll be obstructed every step of the way. And considering it's already rough with, Massey, for instance, he's the new Dr. No. Trump's already in a precarious position. I want him to win. But I'm curious if this is where the coalition breaks, right? So I would say, I don't know where you'd fall in this, Viva, maybe somewhere similar. For someone like me, obviously, I was a moderate liberal, and I'm like, Trump's the guy, all these policies I want. I'm still voting for Trump. I'm still voting likely I'm definitely voting Republican in the midterms because Riley Moore is my congressman. He's amazing, and he's a good friend, and he skateboards. But there are a lot of liberals. We're seeing now with Schultz coming out and being super pissed off, Andrew Schultz, about Trump not publishing the Epstein files. attacking his supporters. Do you think this could break that coalition where the kind of normie middle of the road went for Trump in 2024 and now the midterms come around and they're just like, I'm out?
Well, I mean, not to be doom-pilled, I think that's kind of that might have already happened with Iran, with the debacle in Iran. You lose the people who said no new wars. Oh, this one's not a war, except it's a 12-day war. With no new regime change. Oh, it's not regime change. Well, there's a truth about regime change. And people who didn't want to see any further involvement in any capacity, who were sold on that, are might have left, or might just be despair to the point of, well, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Nothing ever changes. So we might already be there. The question is, how do you salvage that between now and the next midterms? And you got Schultz, Theo Vaughn, Joe Rogan. Rogan was already starting to turn somewhat on some of the deportations. Like, would you have voted for Home Depot parking lot raids? And he was starting to turn. But the idea to turn around and say, I don't want your support anymore because you are, I don't understand it. People say he's a petulant child, stubborn, can't admit when he's wrong, thinks he's going to get people to side with him by doing this.
Yep.
At this point, no, but I mean, at this point, I'm not one to demand apologies, but I think what it would take is an actual sit down, long press conference, maybe a statement saying, look, so things got carried away, but it's not going away. And the problem is this might cost him all of his successes in the midterms. And at the very least, for the time being, nobody's talking about the miracle that it is that he's even alive after, the 1 year anniversary. Nobody's talking about the court victories. Nobody's talking about the economic victories, the border victories. They're talking about Epstein and why I don't believe it. But people are saying it's clear that he's on the list.
I mean, the funny thing is there is an opportunity here that Trump may have inadvertently created in that Democrats are now demanding the release of the documents. Ro Khanna put forward that amendment, which initially I said, this is fantastic. Let's go. I don't care if it's Roe or anybody else. But in the morning, we got news that Republicans voted it down. And I was like, why would they do that? And I looked, because it says any evidence must be published on the DOJ's website within 30 days. And I'm like, well, there's no way anyone's voting for that. Democrats know they're not going to win, so they vote yes. Republicans are then trapped and can't vote yes on releasing all of this abuse material. But Rep. Khanna spoke with me and he said, you are right. I'm going to fix the bill and we're going to change that. We're going to make sure it's clear that will not be released. I said, then you have my support. I want to see that bill. Let's get it done. Republicans have no excuses. That being said, Democrats for years, and even in the corporate press right now, are arguing the Epstein story is a conspiracy theory. They're saying, ABC put a story on July 1st. And this is about a week before the unsigned memo saying, there's no Epstein videos. We spoke with sources and intelligence. They said none of this exists. And I'm asking myself, why is the corporate press writing a story on a non-news item that the Epstein stuff wasn't in the news? Why are they writing this up and publishing this a week before? Then we get this weird memo coming out. It's almost like they're trying to quash the story and claim it's a conspiracy. So ultimately, my point is, let's pull up all of the articles from maybe Rolling Stone had one, or Variety, or New York Times, where they were like, the Epstein story is a crackpot conspiracy. It never happened. And now we can point at all the Democrats that are voting yes on it being like these fringe conspiracy QAnon Pizzagate politicians.
They will weasel out of it to say, we're not confirming the existence of it. We're just saying if it exists, release what you can.
Sure, but we can still call them Pizzagate QAnon people all night.
Well, I mean, now you got AOC confirming there's a list in her tweet for which she deserves to be sued for defamation. But
which tweet was that? What did she say?
She said, "Who would have thought that electing a rapist would slow up the release of the Epstein files?"
Yes.
And I'm like, BITCH, you deserve to get sued for that. And she tweeted it from her personal account. Although I know the state of the law, there's vast immunity for government officials, even when they choose to maliciously defame other people, especially public figures like the president.
She has a personal account?
Yeah, and she tweeted, it specifically says personal account from which she tweeted that defamatory per se tweet. I saw the bit on Ro Khanna's amendment. I didn't agree that it would require or compel the production of criminal CP or CSAM, but I said if that's the concern, and if the Republicans had like a little bit of political savvy, they would have said, we can't pass it like that. Let's add an amendment that says, with the exception of any material, the publication of which would violate child pornography or CSAM laws, and vote for it. Instead, we can't vote for that because I saw the talking point. that would require the publication of criminal materials, and we have to vote no. Democrats get the talking point. Republicans unanimously voted down the amendment. Make the amendment that except in as much as publication would violate existing laws, and then you have your solution to the problem.
I think it's impossible. I think even if Ro Khanna does introduce an amendment saying the CSAM stuff, the child pornography, the issue is still going to be, you'll create a circumstance where the Trump DOJ can redact whatever they want and make that argument and say, sue me. And you're not going to know what to sue over because it's redacted.
Yeah, well, first of all, at the very least, you get some production of documents which might satisfy the base, and you satisfy the concerns that nobody ever wanted to see CP or CSAM, despite that being the talking point as to why they weren't producing it. So
Trump could just make a fake list. Like I don't know. He could literally just put the J6 committee on a list and be like, "Here's the Epstein list," and here's the opportunity to do the funniest thing imaginable.
The reality is that yes, that entire file has been tainted. So how the heck then were we told to believe the file? Because and it wasn't even. It's arguable as to whether or not they were drafting it or phrasing it in a way that, based on our review of the file, he killed himself. There is no list and there's no blackmail material. I was like, okay, good. The file's tainted. I don't think anybody doubts that. The 14 terabytes of video from Epstein's Island. Where did that go? Oh, it only involved Epstein. Oh, the various rooms and the footage was only about Epstein. I think everybody is within their rights to know who visited that island. Guilt by association be damned. That island is sufficiently tainted that you can defend yourself, but everybody should be entitled to know who was there and under what circumstances what went down. They can disclose that.
Apparently behind the scenes, this has been reported that Trump has told, I think it was like Dershowitz or somebody said this, that there's a lot of innocent people whose names are going to appear on having gone to parties or like flown with Epstein, and that he doesn't, it's thousands of prominent individuals they don't want to damage who are not criminally implicated. And my attitude is, I don't care.
No, but not just that. No, I don't care. That explanation itself doesn't make sense. The black book is out already. Everybody understands there are some people in that book who were just in there because they were numbers in a book. So that excuse no longer flies because of the names that are already out there based on the file as it is, the black book, the Rolodex, whatever. The flight logs, we know it. So if there's guilt by association, so be it. That's kind of what happens when you go to the private island of a man who's convicted of sex trafficking. And if you're innocent, not that you have to prove your innocence, but someone's gonna have to prove your guilt. But to say 14 terabytes of that island, Lord knows what they did on it. We still don't know what they did on that island. So how about this? Don't tell us who was there. Tell us what went down on that island.
Or who he was working for. I think there's a fair point in one thing that has me worried. I'm never adamant, like 100% on anything fact-based. It's always what we believe, what we think we know. Is there a percentage chance in any way that Epstein was not working for intelligence? We've made that assumption based off of evidence. There was a statement from a prosecutor who gave him the sweetheart deal back in like 2008 or whatever, who said, I was told to back off because intelligence owned him. And so we based upon these stories, we believe that to be true and correct. I think he likely was intelligence. I think CIA, Mossad, MI6 makes a lot of sense, maybe even others. And that's the blackmail machine we were using. But what if there's a real possibility that he was just a well-connected diddler who used his own personal resources for trafficking and blackmailed politicians so he could be a drug-fueled pedophile?
Well, but that would still be an explanation that people would be satisfied with.
Absolutely.
But so this was Alex Acosta who struck the sweet plea deal back in 2009, who he's told it to the Daily Beast. And so you could take it with a grain of salt. I don't think anyone has officially contradicted it that he said it. Yeah, I was told he's intelligence, leave him alone. I did have an interesting idea that to the extent that Mike Ben's talking about this with Charlie Kirk, say he was being used for money laundering, arms dealing. Okay, then maybe he was a pedo, and CIA was using that blackmail material on him to continue allowing them to have their operations for money laundering and arms dealing. But you imagine if it came out that the U.S. government was exploiting blackmailing a pedophile so they could use him for other military or intelligence purposes. Yeah, the public might be up in arms to the point where they would want to overthrow the government. So it could be that.
But Epstein was a nobody, right?
He was a nobody.
And then all of a sudden, he was this hedge fund guy that made no sense. And so that's why it's hard to believe that he was the one being blackmailed, right?
Well, they could have caught him, and then they could have used him, and then they used it.
But also that implies the CIA was like, keep diddling, just, We won't arrest you.
But it's look, that's within the realm of possibility. Hey, Jeffrey, we're going to use you, and if you ever don't cooperate with us, we're going to release all of this, pedo stuff that's going to put you in jail for life, and we're going to use you to launder money to various places, various sources, sell arms to various places, various sources. I'm not saying it's true. It's just conceivable. And if the American public discovered that their government was actually exploiting of a pedophile for its own intelligence purposes, they might be sufficiently irritated.
That's the point. I think the likely scenario is Epstein was blackmailing other prominent individuals using pedophilia as his attack vector. So Epstein himself seems to have been a diddler based on the evidence we've received. And then the CIA said, we want you to get other people implicated in your activities to use as blackmail against them. So it's like that I think that is the general theory most people believe is likely correct. And I'm going to stress, considering all the other conspiracy theories everybody was right about, I was right on maybe half of them. Some of them I didn't believe myself. And then the stories came out and they were confirmed. It's like, oh, they were right about that one. I'm going to go ahead and assume that the Epstein stuff is probably correct. And the one thing I'll add real quick, is there was a couple of comments I saw in response to this story. People are commenting, and this is on Rumble, saying Trump is 100% implicated in this.
Well, what the question would be, what do you mean implicated? Might it mean that there are prominent members of his administration that would be negatively affected by public disclosures? Yeah. I don't believe for a second that you're going to hear some lawnmower going by. I don't believe for a second that Trump is on the list. If he were, that would have been disclosed, years ago. But can you hypothetically imagine that disclosing of Epstein's activities would either reveal that American foreign policy was dictated by blackmail, or that American government was using blackmail to coerce foreign policy via the trafficking of underage children? It would be earth-shattering.
Let me ask you a question. So the theory that's presented, I think based on everything we've assessed, it appears that Epstein himself was a diddler, and that includes underage, like prepubescent, as well as just teenage girls. The typical theory as to how he operated was that he would bring on 16 and 17-year-old girls, claim they were 18 or 19, film someone engaging in activity, and then say, they're underage and we filmed you, we own you now. And so one of the arguments that's come up is Trump doesn't want a prominent businessman to go to prison for hooking up with a 17-year-old that he was tricked and was told was of age. So let me ask you that. Do you think, I still think we should publish it, and the public can decide if they go to jail over that or not. That's still illegal. You can't be a 30, 40-year-old man hooking up with 16, 17-year-olds. To be fair, actually, there are some jurisdictions, I think, where 16 is the age of consent. But one of the theories or arguments is that many of these people were thinking they were hooking up with 18-year-olds because maybe, they're sleazy businessmen. But they were actually 16, 17. Should those people be exposed and go to jail?
Well, go to jail is a separate thing. Should they be exposed? I can appreciate the arguments for and against. If that's what happened, then the world needs to know what happened.
I agree completely.
The bottom line, we know that Epstein, unaccounted for how he made his millions, why Lex Wexner, whatever his name is, gave him power of attorney over his vast estate. We know that he had, after his conviction, intimate business dealings with Ehud Barak, who visited him like 30 times in his Manhattan apartment, took $1 million to invest in Ehud Barak's business, which lo and behold was a live streaming, video streaming, and geolocation service. So you can connect dots, whatever you want there. Ehud Barak, former prime minister of Israel, says he didn't know about Epstein's conviction when they got into business together, where Epstein was giving him $1 million+ horse crap. You know that Ghislaine Maxwell is the daughter of Robert Maxwell and all of his illustrious intelligence ties, to the point where Mossad shows up at his funeral after his suspicious death. What was his name? Seymour Hersh, accused him of being a Mossad agent. The whole point is, the way, Naftali Bennett put out a tweet and said, Jeffrey Epstein never worked for Mossad. All right. Did he work with Mossad?
Yeah.
Did any intelligence exploit of or use Jeffrey Epstein for any purpose? The bottom line is, Alex Acosta made that statement years ago. I don't think anybody denies it. The question is, do you believe that he was only sex trafficking for himself and himself only, despite Prince Andrew's, clear involvement somewhere along the lines? They're selling us something that nobody's believing because we're not stupid. And the 180 that Trump is doing, it's sort of like a dance. It's a pirouette. Believe the file. He killed himself. We'll release it. It's on my desk, phase 1. Then it comes out, we can't release it. Then it comes out, you can't trust the file. And nobody's believing it. And the question is, how do you get out of this situation? If it were just a question of people not believing it, it would be serious enough. But to burn the bridges with an electorate that you need in order to have a margin that is too big to rig, he's taking the worst advice ever, or he's surrounded by too many yes men who are not saying, Donald, this is a big effing problem, and you're not going to browbeat your way out of it. And I say this with respect and admiration for Trump. It's a bloody miracle that he's with us today. It's a miracle that he's president after everything. And now some people are saying, Viva, God chose him, and so let him cook. I was like, first of all, God chose him. God gave him ears to listen to the people that God put in place to elect him into power. And so all of these things, God having a plan doesn't mean that we all sit idly by here while he ostensibly destroys it.
Maybe we're part of that plan. Viva, thank you so much for joining and sharing your insights. I do appreciate it. Where can everybody find you?
Oh, at Viva Frei. I got the 3 o'clock slot on Rumble. So Viva Frei live this afternoon with Susan Crabtree. Tomorrow, Mike Benz is coming on. And Friday, Vince from The Vince Show is going to come on. So it's a big week. And vivabarneslaw.locals.com, where a lot of this would not be new to anybody if you follow our locals community. It's a good one.
Right on, man. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you next time.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Viva, always smart, on point, great insights. I was highlighting his tweet. I actually misunderstood his tweet. He was saying, they came out and said, Epstein killed himself. We looked at the files. That's all it's there. And it's like, whoa. Why do you believe those files from a corrupt DOJ? Interesting point. We went a little bit over time, but it's cool, my friends. We're going to gear up that raid for our friend Russell Brand, where he's talking once again about the Epstein story. So let's send you guys on your way. Smash that like button. Share the show with everyone you know. Follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast. We're back tonight at 8 p.m. for Timcast IRL. Stay tuned. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see y'all in the next segment.